Bienvenue, benvenuti, and welcome to Expatriatical, the podcast for expats, travelers, and other adventurous souls. I'm Chandra, and after living as an expat with my husband and 4 children in 2 different countries for 6 years, I've learned the arts of pivoting during pitfalls, traveling tastefully for less, and soaking in amazing new cultures without losing your own. Join me as we dive into the joys and challenges of travel and the expat life in every episode. Merry Christmas and happy holidays, everyone. As the old song goes, it's the most wonderful time of the year. And for many of us, we may be preparing to gather with those that we love. And speaking of love, that is actually our topic today. One of my favorite Christmas movies is even called Love Actually. It follows multiple couples around London during the holidays, and Hugh Grant plays the character of the Prime Minister. In the trailer of the movie, you hear his voice say, "Love is everywhere. It's not particularly dignified, but if you look for it, you'll find that love actually is all around." So, in the spirit of Love Actually, we are going to be talking about international romance. But let's be honest, I am not the person to be speaking about that directly, since my husband, Chris, was raised in the same state in America as I was. And so I have recruited some help for this fun and goosepimply, that's goosebumps for all of my American listeners, topic. Without further ado, let me introduce you to her. Well, you guys, I'm so excited for this interview. Today, I have a very dear friend, one of my first friends when I moved to Paris, and she is here to talk about a very cool and exciting topic, and her name is Heather. Heather Dawes.
Hello.
Thank you for being on the podcast today.
My pleasure.
And so, ironically, you were one of the first lists. So I have a list on my phone, like of notes of different episodes. I have a category of like solo episodes and then of interview episodes, and you are in the first few on there of like, of like, oh, she would be so good to talk about this subject. So today we are going to talk about international romance. But first, can we please talk just a little bit about you? Like, where did you grow up in the world, and what did you want to be when you grew up, quote unquote? Just a little bit about yourself, please.
Okay, so I'm Canadian.
Yes.
And I was born in Calgary, but our family moved all across Canada.
Okay.
So after, I spent my first birthday in PEI in the Maritimes.
Okay.
Then we lived in Nova Scotia for a year or two. Then we moved up to northern New Brunswick, where my sister and my brother were born. I think we were there for 8 years. And I'm going to say that the timeline, because this is sort of important to Paris. So 8 years in New Brunswick, then we moved to Alberta, right in the Rockies. So skiing, really like an outdoor life there for 8 years. Went off to college, Red Deer, Calgary, Vancouver. Then my parents moved to BC. I went up there for a year. I was working, and then I finally got my job as a flight attendant in Calgary, and I was there for 8 years until I moved abroad.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right. So you're from Canada. You have lived all over Canada, really. And but where would you say, as far as when you go back to Canada, what feels the most like home, or does anything feel like home anymore?
Yeah, that's a complicated.
It's complicated. It's okay if you're like, I don't really know.
It's a complicated concept for me at this point, because now I've lived, at the beginning of my life, I really resonated with the Maritimes, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. So it's very like Acadian, Nova Scotia, obviously, that's very Scottish, Irish descendants. So that was like really like, I felt like that's my heart. And then being in the mountains, I was like, no way, cowboys and like this outdoor, like mountain woman pioneer. No, that's where home is. And then all of my family, my brother and his family are in Revelstoke, BC. So they're like in a mountain town.
Yeah.
My sister's in Kamloops, sort of like desert golfing area. And my parents are northern British Columbia on a lake. So really beautiful summers, really cold winters.
Okay.
I guess because family is home, that's where my home is when I think of Canada.
Okay.
And then now being abroad, I've been abroad for 8 years.
Yeah.
2 years in Scotland and 6 in Paris. So now I feel it's enough time here as well that this has become home too.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. No, I totally, that makes complete sense. No, I love that. And I really think that can speak to some people. I don't want to say that you feel like traitorous, but you're like, well, there's specialness there, and I think for us, at least as a family, like home is where we are, our immediate family is, like that's just always, and I've actually had that concept since before moving abroad is like, and this is no offense because I know that my mom and my mother-in-law listen to these episodes of Expatriatical, but Chris would always be like, we're going back home. And I'm like, no, we're going back to Colorado. Like, and he would not like that. I was correcting him, but yeah, so I totally understand that. But so you study, what was your degree in? You mentioned like, did you complete your degree?
I went to college actually. And I did travel and tourism.
Okay. There you go. That's perfect.
I was a little bit more like at that time in my life, I sort of backed out of the pressure of university.
Okay.
And I guess that's, like looking back, maybe it was slightly like a regret, but it just wasn't me at the time. Okay. And I had family members who had been in aviation, and I was like, I think that would suit me. I really love people. Yeah. I really love things to change, different crews, different places, different days, lots of holidays, So I was really attracted to going into aviation, and it worked out.
That's awesome. Okay, so how long had you been? Oh, wait, sorry. I have another question for you. So when you became a flight attendant, what was your favorite thing about your job?
Well,
were there too many to even count?
Yeah, well, at the time when I was working, I think the friendships that you create so quickly, like you see so many people a day. Like let's say you see 300 people a day. And it's interesting how quickly okay, I'm going to get along with this person. Or like you say something and you both look at each other, you both start laughing, and you're like, okay, we're going to be best friends. Like we get each other.
That's awesome.
So definitely the friends that you make. And the locations were amazing. I realized pretty soon that I like quieter places to go when I'm working. So Hawaii, like...
Nice.
Every winter, I would just bid for those destinations, those layovers. And so I guess and they're the funny stories. Like I really miss laughing. And, I still laugh. I laugh every day, but.
No, but you
I like the stories. And one thing that I'll just mention, if there's any flight attendants or pilots out there, I miss that in the air, we're not connected on our phones. Yeah. There's no internet. There's no distractions. And so the stories that come out of sheer boredom or, you know what? It makes the world go round. And like, I realized that maybe those friendships became so tight because you're there. You're on an 8-hour flight together and you're like, all right, so what was your favorite, blah, blah, blah. And then you really get to know someone. Yeah. So,
I don't know. Those, there was this one time that, that kind of stuff. Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Okay. So now I will go to the question that I had jumped to and wasn't ready. How long had you been a flight attendant when you met your current husband, but like when you met Dan?
I had been flying for 9 years, and at the time, so I'd been flying 9 years, living in Calgary, and I was actually working on a project to maybe sort of leave flying full-time and go down to part-time.
Okay.
And this project was going to, I wanted to travel the world, and I wanted to do documentaries and like a travel show. And I had the backing, and I was like, okay, let's do this. And I had a videographer, and everything was set in motion. And Dan and I met in Calgary, and he was super cool about it. Like he was just like, yes, this is your dream. Like, let's go. And I was like, thank you for just like, we had like maybe 1 or 2 dates, and it was like, he was like, yeah, like go for it. I could see you doing this. But then
Yeah.
There's
more to the story.
There's more to that.
Yeah.
Do you want to set it up with a question?
No.
You know it's coming.
Oh no, I do know it's coming. But I kind of want to go back to like that moment when you met him, because were you on a plane when you met him?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
He was on holiday, so he's big into snowboarding. He's traveled around the world snowboarding, and he was in Canada on a snowboard trip. I think he was doing avalanche training, and yeah, and then he had been to Revelstoke, where my brother is, and so yeah, when we met in Calgary, we were just speaking about all these mountains that he knew, and I was surprised that he would fly all the way over here and go to these mountains. I mean, they're not small, but they are sort of unique. Like you would have to drive hours to get to them.
Easy access
it's not easy. And I guess like as a Canadian, I'm like, oh, really? Like you would come here. But we met, and we had that in common right away. And the other thing that we had in common was both of our grandfathers fought in World War II in Bomber Command in the RAF. So my grandfather was earlier in the war, he volunteered, and so he went with the British Air Force, and then his grandfather, obviously Scottish, went with the British Air Force. So that was our first date. Like we spoke about a lot on our first date, and so that was another like sort of like connection, which carries on as well to the second date.
So I'm gonna ask about, you said he was in an area near your brother. So when Dan met your family, what were the reactions? And then we might have to jump forward and then jump back.
Yeah.
Like the same for his family, for you. So.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry that I hop around a lot.
It's okay. It's a story that kind of needs hopping around, I think.
Okay. So I meet someone from Scotland. Okay. So my family and my friends are like, why? What? Like, why? What is happening? And what is going to happen? And again, like settling down really wasn't in my mind. Like I was thinking, okay, no, I'm just going to travel the world. And I mean, I really like him, but how do we know what's going to happen? So we spend that weekend and there was a bunch of friends. Everyone was sort of that weekend. But we obviously made a connection, and then I left for a pairing, like flying for 4 days. So, we exchanged phone numbers, and then Dan went back to Scotland and then actually got on a helicopter and went offshore. So he was in the North Sea working. Okay. And so, as we're sort of chatting back and forth, we connect actually our grandfathers through email.
You connected your grandfathers.
Yes.
That's so cool.
They were both 91 at the time. Oh and we felt real like this is sort of a responsibility. Yeah. There's not many of them left. Yeah. Let's connect them. So within that first week of meeting each other, and I still have the emails and I printed them out, and every now and then special. I read them because we both lost those grandfathers in the first year. So
of your
months,
relationship.
Oh yeah, months afterwards. Wow. Okay, so we do the emails back and forth, and then one of my friends was like, Heather, how is this gonna work? Yeah. Why are we speaking about this guy right now over wine? Like what's happening? And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna call him right now.
No, you
and
didn't.
She was like, "Oh my god!" And I'm like, "No, I'm gonna do it. Like I feel it. I know it. I think he knows it. I'm gonna call him." And he was working night shift, so with the time difference, it worked out. And I was like, "Hi, Dan." He's like, "Hi," and I'm like, I'm wondering, on your
I feel like that
it was
tension?
I was nervous because I was like, how? Okay, so I said, I was wondering if on your next set of days off, if you'd like to come back to Canada.
Yeah.
And maybe I could take you on a road trip to where I grew up by Jasper. Because it's sort of off the beaten path, and it's a beautiful, beautiful national park in Canada. So it was like, you know, I knew with him being like mountains and outdoorsy,
he would enjoy that.
He would love that, and it's my home. I love going up there. And so I remember him, like, it was a video call, and I remember him just like a little bit surprised, and he was like, oh, have I made that much of an impression on you? And that's not something those aren't really the words that, I mean, I would use. But anyway, I was like, yeah, you did. So is it a yes or a no? And like, I really just put him on the spot. And he was like, okay, yes, like, I'll come back. And I was like, we can go on a road trip. I'll plan it. And if we don't like each other, you know, after a couple days, I could just leave you at a bus stop. Like, no pressure.
No pressure. In the middle of Canada.
Yeah, like, just like, and, you know, we can just, you know, go our own way. Like, you know.
Yeah.
It's not like we're going to get married and have kids, you know. Like, let's just come on over. Yeah. So anyway.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Okay, number one, I love his reaction, which is so polite. And like, did I make that big of an impression? Like, I love it. He was like, and you're like, well, I wouldn't call it that, but sure, you know.
Well, you know, and that's our characters, right? Like, I go with my intuition, my emotions. I'm just sort of, you know, flying around the world. Like, I just think everything is going to work out, and it has. Like, and he's more like, okay, we need to plan this. Like, we need to think things through. And so maybe I think it works.
It's a good yin and yang.
Yeah,
I think, for sure. Okay, so was it on this road trip that there was a significant curve, like a detour? Is this the same?
Many things happened on this road trip.
Can you please tell us a little bit about this road trip and why it has played like it made a significant impact in how your life has gone?
Yes. So Dan and I left from Calgary, and we drove north up to Jasper. So it's a 5-hour drive on the most beautiful or the most scenic road of Canada. It was in complete fog.
Oh, you can't see anything. Oh, no.
Entire drive. So, you know, we got to talk and get to know each other. And then just before we hit Jasper, there was a grizzly bear on the side of the road. No. So that was like super cool because obviously I had been like really talking this place up, which I was like, okay, yeah. So anyway, I was really happy to see that grizzly bear. And we got to the hotel, and I was like, oh, I don't feel great. Actually, did I eat on the road up? Because, you know, that's something, you know. Okay, first thing, Heather, did you eat and did you drink water? Okay, yeah, no, I did. We did have some snacks. Okay, well, let's go for dinner, and I'll take you to like a really nice, you know, one of my favorite, blah, 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 like on the main road and Main Street. There's only like 2 streets basically in Jasper. So like, let's go. And then when we were at dinner, I was like, no, still not feeling great, but like, you know, act cool. Yeah. Act pretty. You know, kind of like this guy. And then in the middle of the night, I woke Dan up and I said, hey, actually, I'm not feeling good.
Oh, no.
And he was like, okay, like what? And I was like, it's my throat. And maybe I'm having an allergic reaction.
Oh, my goodness.
Because like my throat was closing up. And he was like, should I get some flannels? And I'm like, a plaid shirt is not going to help me.
Oh, my gosh.
You know, remember, like, this is Canadian English, Scottish English, you know, okay. So, and he was like, no, like, and so then he brings me a face cloth with warm water, and I put it on my throat. And I'm like, okay, that's better. But I actually think I'm going to need a nurse or a doctor. Like, this is accelerating. Okay. So he ends up driving me to the hospital. And Jasper is a small town, so it's like a 2-room hospital.
Oh my goodness.
And right away, the nurse is like, okay, come on back. Is this your boyfriend? And I just like looked at her like, and she was like, he can't come back unless he's your boyfriend. I'm like, he's my boyfriend.
Oh my goodness.
You know, I mean, come on. It's still like second date.
Yeah.
And so we go back there and I get put on an IV and it's quite serious. I had, they didn't know yet, but I had strep throat. But my tonsils were so swollen. They were like, listen, we're going to try this IV drip. But in the next couple hours, if you don't start feeling better, we are going to put you on a helicopter and fly you to Edmonton because we don't have the capabilities here to yeah, I know, to cut your, to lance your tonsils. I don't know what they were going to do,
goodness.
but the guy was like, the doctor was pretty concerned. So Dan is sitting there like, okay. And I'm like half drooling, half like, oh my God, this is the most embarrassing day of my life. But I don't care because I don't want to die. Yeah, I'm scared. And so he stayed with me through the night. And then the next day, the doctor actually was like, you know what? You might as well go have a break to Dan because we need to monitor her. I had the antibiotics were working. And so I was like, Dan, why don't you rent a bike and go around the Valley of the 5 Lakes? Still trying to be cool.
Yeah.
And he was like, sure, all right. So he goes and rents a bike and he goes around the Valley of the 5 Lakes on his own. And then, yeah, we had seen that grizzly bear. And then halfway through, a very like solitary, beautiful bike trip, he's like, wait a minute. I'm in Canada and there are bears. And I guess for the rest of the trip, he just sang like all of these Scottish like folk songs like
To get him through.
Oh, no. So he comes back to the hospital and the doctor was like, okay, you know what? How about you go take a break to me?
Okay.
And was like, we'll release you. We'll take the IV out and you can go for like, why don't you go sleep at the hotel and then just come back in the morning and check on us? Maybe we'll do another round of IV antibiotics and see how you're doing. So I was like, I was weak, but I was like feeling better. Okay. And I still like had so much to show him. Like, this is my home. I was so excited to bring someone and share that. So we went to, I think, Jasper like brewery or something. I can't really remember which restaurant we chose, but anyway, we show up in the restaurant and Dan was like just waiting for that pint. And he goes up, orders it, puts it on the table, and I went to get my like ginger ale or something. And the vein that they had been using to, emergency send like antibiotics completely burst open.
No.
Everywhere, blood everywhere on the table.
This is like a date from a horror movie.
I don't know if I've told you this yet.
No.
Okay, so then,
oh my goodness.
Then Dan runs to the washroom, grabs like a whole bunch of napkins. We cover my arm. We try to wipe up the table. The waitresses come over. They're like, oh my gosh, like they start helping us. I get back in the car. We go back to the hotel. First aid kit, like patch up my vein that had burst open.
Goodness gracious.
And so that was over. But just to say, like, in these crazy, ridiculous moments, the care, we were both caring for each other. You could tell that we were a team right then and there, even though we were just so new to each other. We were both considering like,
I had the chills.
and so the next day we go to the hospital and the doctor gave me like, I think another like hour of antibiotics. And then he said, okay, like here's some for the road. And I was like, hey, like I'm supposed to be going to Vietnam to do this travel show. Is this going to like hurt my tummy to be taking this? And he was like, oh yeah, you got no prebiotics left. Like, girl, you're going to need to like, ramp that up this week. I'm like, okay. So I had been thinking like, this is maybe, I'm kind this might be delayed. So we get back in the car and I'm like, oh yeah, Dan, actually, my dad is having a 60th birthday in a couple days. It's a surprise party. Do you want to drive west to BC and come to this birthday with me?
I love the spontaneity.
Like, totally put him on the spot. He was like, yeah, sure.
Sure.
So we start driving to BC. We drive straight to my sister's, and she loves him immediately. She just got it, because she had, we had been messaging, but she was kind of like, Heather, I don't know. Yeah. Like, this seems complicated. Can you give it some time? Yeah. And I'm like, no, I know. She's like, okay, let's give it some time. She tells me now, as soon as she met him, she was like, yeah, I knew. Aww. And then the next day we surprised, Dad, happy birthday. And he was kind of like, who's this?
It's his birthday. He can say that, right? Like,
yeah. And so anyway, this is Dan, and my family just, it clicked really quickly with them as well. Like, everyone was just like, yeah, this makes sense.
Oh,
like, totally.
That.
Then when the weekend was over, we had to drive back. So from Quesnel back to Calgary. So that would be, again, via Jasper. And I'm like, well, I'm feeling better now. We could stop, do a hike.
Yeah.
Like, let's just get back on track. We had a really good weekend. And let's go. And as we're driving out of Quesnel, and we're just a bit north of Quesnel on the highway, and it was 4-lane highway.
To each direction, correct?
To each direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, not America.
Yeah. No, that's what I would call a 4-lane highway.
So two each way. And I know this road very well, but because I hadn't been feeling great over the weekend, Dan was driving my Jeep, and a car on the other side of the road, we saw it, and we actually did see the car sort of jerk.
Okay.
And almost like he swerved like an animal, like a small cat or a dog.
Okay.
Like
he's trying to miss something.
Yeah, so we saw that motion on the corner of our eyes. And I knew that we were driving along actually a very steep bank that goes down into train tracks.
Oh, gosh.
So, Dan doesn't really know this so now all of a sudden, and this is probably within seconds, everything slows down. The car starts veering towards us. The man at the wheel had fallen asleep. So also the wheel's not coming straight. It's one of his hands dropped last.
Yeah.
And so it's actually like we can't speed up. Like, it is going to hit us.
Yeah.
And Dan sort of he wanted to stay on the road.
Yeah.
But he had to go to the right. The car hit us right at sort of the driver's mirror. Okay. And then spun us, pushed us so that we started doing 360s.
Oh, my goodness.
I held on to the side, and I was so worried and stressed that we were going to go over the cliff.
Yeah.
But we managed to stay on the highway. We did a couple 360s. We didn't flip. I don't know how.
Like, miraculously, you don't fall down the cliff like the movies, or whatever. Roll.
Yeah. And then all the airbags go off. I can't remember if the back window smashed the glass. I feel like it did. And we both sort of kind of woke up from it. And again, it was just another moment that we were both so calm for each other. Like, really just just looking at each other like, are you okay? And both just so calm in that moment. And it was bad. They closed the highway. The driver had actually a passenger who was taken by ambulance. There was another car I don't know who they hit. Like, again, it was crazy.
It was a lot.
I had to call my mom and dad, which I still to this day remember my parents' eyes when they came, and I was sitting in the ambulance, just getting,
So you weren't far from home yet.
No. We were only about 30 minutes from my parents.
Okay.
Which was,
good.
a silver lining.
Yeah.
That they were there. So yeah, I guess just like another moment of being like, okay, we were in a really seriously stressful situation. And just how we reacted together. I don't know.
I love it.
It just, you can go on nice dates for months and years, but we just sort of had
a crash course, no pun intended, of like dating and life together.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a really, okay, I do have chills like all over. It's a really beautiful, like exciting. I didn't know about the sickness. Like I knew about the car accident, but I didn't know about the sickness. Okay. So, maybe we could briefly touch on this car accident. This car accident kind of changed things for you, if I remember correctly. It put the travel show on a stop, at least.
Oh yeah, it just stopped. Yeah, that dream just sort of ended, and I mean, I had to make some pretty sad phone calls to everyone. I mean, flights were booked for that week. It was just super sad. And when I saw the doctors, many doctors for this, because they immediately knew I had whiplash, which I never knew anything about whiplash before, but I was like, how can you tell what this injury is going to be? Because you couldn't see anything. And I think one of the first appointments, she was like, "You're not going to fly for 6 months." And I was like, 6 months?
6 months with whiplash?
Oh my gosh.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like I was like, oh, okay. She was like, yeah, you need physiotherapy. You're going to need like pain medication. And I mean, I was in a lot of pain. I was crying constantly. I was passing out. I was shaking. It was bad. And so... yeah, I mean, my parents had to come down and help take care of me, just making meals, driving me to appointments. Dan had to go back to work.
Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, his rotation was 3 weeks on, 3 weeks, off.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my parents sort of had to step in and help me out.
Your parents are wonderful, by the way. I've had the pleasure of meeting them both, and they're delightful. And so is Dan. Sorry, Dan, if you listen to this, you're a rock star too. But we'll talk more about you later. But anyways, that's awesome.
Yeah. So everyone sort of stepped up, and I really tried my best with physio, and the company, the airline that I worked for, they were so kind and supportive, and really, they wanted nothing more than for me to get better and hopefully come back to work, but 100% just get better. Like they were so, so genuine in that. Like they were like, you we could find you another job within the company. Like, just keep going to your appointments and just, but it just didn't work.
Yeah.
I was really, really hurt. And, so there was a choice to be made.
Oh my goodness, you guys, I hated to cut the interview off there, but it was just so good. And there was so much more that we talked about that I thought it would be best as a 2-part interview. So tune in next week to hear more about Heather's story and what happens next, because there's a lot more to the story that meets the eye or ear in this case. Now, to keep with our holiday theme and the theme of love and kind of just those nice gushy feelings, today's Shan Select is going to be a restaurant that I recently went to, though I have walked past it multiple times before, called Le Choupinet, which means the little cabbage in English. It is located right across the street from Luxembourg Gardens, and after a family photo shoot and some headshots that were taken by Maria from Katie Donnelly Photography, don't worry, you'll see those soon, we treated the kids to breakfast at this corner cafe or brasserie. From the outside, there was nothing that seemed out of the ordinary, but we knew we would want breakfast, so I looked at the menu that was outside, and they had a full breakfast for €15. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but when I opened the door, not only was there a gorgeous Christmas tree and decorations, but at many of the tables, there were giant teddy bears with red bows around their necks sitting in some of the seats. It was truly magical, even for me as an adult. And of course, when my children saw them, they were absolutely delighted. It took decorating for the holidays to a whole other level. And when we had our food, oh my goodness, I honestly couldn't even eat everything. We were served baguette with bread and butter, which is called tartine in French, 3 fried eggs, freshly squeezed juice, a hot drink of our choice, and fromage blanc with a raspberry coulis, which is basically like yogurt, only it has a flavor slightly resembling cottage cheese with a delicious sweet raspberry puree sauce. It was a fun environment as we sat right beside a multicolored piano and, of course, a couple of ginormous overstuffed teddy bears. And we ate till our hearts were content. The kids were probably the most happy about getting to sit next to the teddy bears and having their own giant cup of hot chocolate. And I know that I now have a new spot to take guests to that's near the Luxembourg Gardens. I will be sure to put Le Choupinet's website and Instagram handle in the show notes. And as always, I am not an affiliate, just a fan. Before we wrap up this episode, I'm going to go back to the quote that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, which will serve as our quote of the day. As Hugh Grant so eloquently put it, "Love is everywhere. It's not particularly dignified, but if you look for it, you'll find that love actually is all around." That is it for today's episode, everybody, and I can't wait to meet you back here again next week to share more of my interview with my friend Heather. Thank you for listening. I really can't express enough how grateful I am that you choose to spend some of your very valuable time listening to this podcast. It definitely makes me feel loved indeed. And if you want to share the love, I would be so honored if you would share this episode or any other episode that has really stuck out to you with a family member, friend, coworker, whatever you want. Thank you so much. Have a great day, guys. Until next week, this is Chandra Alley reminding you to live and travel in the know with Expatriatical.